Today on the Blues Rants podcast, Thatcher Demko, I don't even know how to spell his name. You've got the Calgary Flames with a big week ahead of them, not just including tonight. We'll tee up that game. Got a whole lot of games in the NHL last night to kick things off. The Kachucks continue to make headlines, and we'll just see where the show goes from there. Probably cut it a little short tonight after, I spoke live for about an hour and a half straight and definitely had no voice for that final half hour. But let's just see where the night takes us. This is the Blues Rants podcast. Let's get this show underway. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of the Blues Rants podcast. I am your host, Philip Miller. As always, we are streaming to you live from Twitter. We're streaming to you live from YouTube. We're not streaming live to Facebook right now, having some technical issues with that. If we can get them resolved, we will surely let you know. But still, we are live on Twitter and we're live on YouTube. And we thank you very much for tuning in. Again, my name is Philip Miller, your host. Let's jump right into the next episode of the Blues Rants podcast. If you can guess by the title, you know what we're going to talk about. Thatcher Demko. What was that last night? Blues lose against the Vancouver Canucks 3-1. Well, okay, not really. It was more like 2-1, but okay, whatever. Bo Horvat gets an empty net goal with literally less than a second to go. Sure, fine, whatever. 3-1, 2-1, who cares? For all intents and purposes, I thought the Blues played a great game. I don't think anybody can deny that the Blues played well. There were little execution mistakes, which we'll jump into, but for the most part, I thought they were completely dominant in the third period. It was almost split down the middle, but I think it really sort of went in the Blues' favor in the first period. Second period, they got a little bit away from their game. As we've kind of seen in the past, that middle period is starting to shape up a little rough for the St. Louis Blues as of late. But for all intents and purposes, a pretty thorough and consistent 60 minutes considering nobody in the NHL has played for almost a week and a half, if you don't include the All-Stars. And I do include the All-Stars anyway because not a lot of them really played to begin with. Because nobody cares about the All-Star game. But you get back into the full swing of things in the NHL. We had, I don't even know how many games we had last night. Did we have 6, I believe, including the Blues? I believe we had 4. 4. Yes, I'm seeing 4. Blues, Canucks, Ducks, Sharks, Lightning, Stars, Maple Leafs, Predators. But Canucks take down the Blues 3-1. Blues were solid throughout the entire game. JT Miller scores a pair for the Canucks in the second period to put them up 2-1. Then Bo Horvat with the empty net goal for the Canucks. Thatcher Demko. As I'm saying, the episode title is Demko'd. Thatcher Demko making 36 saves on 37 shots last night. Over 70 attempts from the St. Louis Blues on Demko and the Vancouver Canucks. Lots of blocked shots by Vancouver as well. Let's not forget that for a second. But it's rare, almost rare, practically non-existent, because I don't like to give goalies credit for quote-unquote stealing a game a lot. I don't like to pin the blame of the loss on, the goalie just outplayed us. This one, I have no other possible defense. Now, yes, the Blues were a bit sloppy on their execution. There was a 3-on-1 where Justin Falk, I don't really know what exactly happened to him there, But all intents and purposes, Thatcher Demko was lights out. He robbed Jaden Schwartz at least twice in the third period, robbed Braden Shen a few times. Both of them were lights out. Colton Parayko, he was robbing everybody. And it was kind of like that both ways. Jake Allen was also terrific in net, in my opinion. He made some great saves too. And not just for a lack of Blues defense, which I still think was solid through 58, 59 of the 60 minutes. But Thatcher Demko completely stole that game. I just said I don't like to use that excuse, but how can you not for this game? Thatcher Demko, what is it with these no-name goaltenders or these rookie goaltenders that suddenly the Blues just turn into Vezina candidates? Like, nobody was... The only reason we were talking about Tristan Jarry 2 months ago for the Pittsburgh Penguins was because he was going to be a trade asset. Because the Penguins were starting to slump. They were running into issues. They were down Crosby. Evgeny Malkin was on a tear, but they were down Crosby. I think Brian Rust went down. Jake Gensel is going to be out probably, I think, until playoffs, optimistically for them. A whole myriad of injuries. They can't get goaltending. They're going to trade Jarry. And then just like that, Tristan Jarry puts up a 3-0 shutout, again on NBCSN on live TV. And now he was at the All-Star game. Like, who thought Tristan Jarry was a good goaltender prior to that game, which, if you look at his numbers, literally kicked off the stretch that got him voted into the All-Star game? I'm that sure, call it a hot take, Pittsburgh fans, but let's be honest. That started with a 3-0 shutout against St. Louis and took off from there. Same with Thatcher Demko. And maybe he was just back from a great holiday break and was just dialed in. Maybe who knows? Maybe he wanted to prove to himself that he can still be a starting goaltender alongside of Jacob Markstrom, who was also at the All-Star game, who's also been posting good numbers, but is still clearly Vancouver's number one goaltender. But Thatcher Demko had a Vezina-level game last night. He had a playoff Stanley Cup caliber game last night, and he was phenomenal. All hats off go to him. He was clearly the best player on the ice last night. For the Blues, I'm inclined to give it to Jake Allen. I probably should and will give it to Jake Allen because Jake Allen made a healthy amount of stops as well. Some of them, were, again, the result of bad offensive breakdowns. I think about the 3-on-1 goal where you've got all three forwards in their respective positions in the defensive zone, and Justin Falk tries to rip a shot from the point straight down the middle. Well, what immediately happens? Just gets blocked off a shin pad real easily, and then all of a sudden you got a 3-on-1 going the other way. Justin Falk overcommits way too much on the left side, and just like that, now all of a sudden it's in the back of your net. I've talked often before about just little key critical moments like that, little key thinking moments, clutch moments like that. That might be where I have my biggest issue with Justin Falk. Because I think the reality's starting to sink in. Justin Falk's going to have a career worst first season with the St. Louis Blues. And in some ways, I can't blame the guy because he's been with Carolina for 9 years. Carolina and St. Louis play sort of different hockey styles, but he's developed a chemistry for so long over there, whether it be with guys, like Justin Williams, who has now returned, or I'm blanking out on all the different types of Carolina Hurricanes players that are with that organization right now, as I'm now trying to vamp for time as I head to Hockey Reference and look up their roster. But all the same, you have a player that's been with a franchise for all 9 of his 10-year career, and he comes over to the Blues. He's not producing as offensively as he ever has with Carolina, and you take him away from guys like Jordan Stahl, guys like Van Riemsdyk, who's I'm totally blanking out here. My apologies. But Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, Dougie Hamilton, all those guys. Now, and again, I'm not going to excuse him too much for that 3-on-1 because I thought that was just kind of a bad play all around. It was bad play. I don't know why we had so many Blues in deep. I don't know why he decides to take the point shot on the slot that just easily gets blocked. And then all of a sudden you have a 3-on-2, which was really a 3-on-1 because, who was it? Vince Dunn, I think, couldn't get back there fast enough. So that goal, again, another one for JT Miller. How about that JT Miller signing? Are Canucks fans not laughing all the way to the bank now with JT Miller's contract? Because when the trade happened this past year, it was not a popular one in Vancouver. It was arguably the worst one they had. And props to Jim Benning for developing the depth of this team over the offseason. Because, yeah, you looked at signings like Tanev and JT Miller and all these other guys, and you really were kind of curious as to why they were going for some of these players. And at first, it might not have really paid off. But there was a lot of decent depth signings in there for a game specifically like this, when you have a lot of your new, young, elite talent that doesn't produce every single night, which is not always expected of them. But you had a game like tonight where I barely saw anything of Brock Besser. I barely heard anything from Bo Horvat until he scored with 1 second to go. I didn't see a ton of Quinn Hughes. I think of the big four, Pettersson being the last one, I thought Pettersson, had the biggest impact for the team. And of course, I think he got at least one assist. I'd have to check on the points again. Looking over at Elias Pettersson. Yep, he had one assist. He was a +2 on the night with 3 shots. But all the other guys, like Jake Virtanen, Tanev, JT Miller, they got the job done for Vancouver last night. And say what you will about the signings back then. Say what you will about Jim Benning, who's had his game called, or had his career with Vancouver called for. Everybody has for some of these losses, a lot of people have wanted Jim Benning out of Vancouver, but you get that win, and now you're top in the Pacific Division, or at least you maintain top in the Pacific Division, which again, as we mentioned yesterday, is just a total roller coaster, and literally flip a coin or roll a 6-sided die, because that's about the odds that you have right now for getting into the playoffs with that Pacific Division. It's totally bonkers. And that leads me into teeing up the game for Calgary, which we'll get into in a moment. But I also really did like Zach Sanford's play. I think Zach Sanford had a really solid game. Obviously, he scored the lone goal for the Blues. David Perron had a fantastic setup. Oh boy. I am just checking my phone here. Got some breaking news for y'all, for anybody listening. Oskar Sundqvist, lower body injury last night, will not play against the Flames tonight. Berube made the announcement in a pregame meeting with reporters on Tuesday afternoon. Says, we don't know right now. It is a concern when we lose him. He's a good player for us. Sammy Blais will move into Sundqvist's spot in the lineup. He was scheduled to play on the 4th line with McEachern and, or I believe, Barbashev and De La Rose. I beg your pardon. So, that's fun. Oskar Sundqvist out of the lineup tonight against Calgary. Just coming in reports on the NHL app. Thank you very much, NHL. Coming from Chris Pinkert just about 20 minutes ago. So no Oskar Sundqvist. That's pretty big deal. And I mean, I liked Sundqvist's game once he sort of shifted in for Jordan Kyrou, who I also thought had a fairly decent game. I thought he was registering some really solid chances. He played some pretty smart hockey there. But I noticed Oscar Sundqvist a lot more, obviously, when he got onto that line that Jordan Kyrou was on with Braden Shen and Jaden Schwartz. And Jaden Schwartz and Braden Shen are also a couple of my top picks. 20 minutes and 19 minutes 39 respectively for Braden Shen and Jaden Schwartz. Both had 5 shots on net. I believe Shen had 6 hits and Jaden Schwartz had 5. They unfortunately were a -2 combined for the evening. So that's why I think eventually I have to, as I said before, give my pick to Jake Allen. He made some really great key saves at pivotal moments during the game. I think he was very composed and relaxed in his net, even after being off for a certain amount of time. And it's a tough road loss for sure, but once again, I have to give full credit to Thatcher Demko for running away with that game. And I saw a lot of people griping about the refs. Yes, they were bad last night. Yes, they were missing calls here, calling the wrong people here, not calling penalties or calling real sketchy penalties here and there. I don't like blaming the refs. I don't ever like blaming the refs. If you watch TSN on YouTube, which I recommend you do because they're a great source for any hockey information, they just released a new series. I think the second episode just came out called Ref You Suck. And it's really all about, how much of a thankless job the referee position really is. Like, think about that. Who in their right mind would want to be a ref? Especially in today's day and age. And especially for a sport like hockey or like soccer. I about said football, but I'll throw in American football there too. But it's a really interesting series, and like especially the first episode where it talks about the human aspect of being a ref. And it really kind of, at the end of the day, makes you feel for the referee a little bit. I mean, we have to remember, these guys are only human. That's a huge aspect of all sports. And I know, they're not going to bat 1,000. I know they might not even bat 500 sometimes. But I don't like blaming losses specifically on referees at any point in any game. I also don't do that because the moment I do, every single other hockey fan is just going to go game 5 and I have to shut my mouth forever. So, that should about wrap it up for the loss against Vancouver. Blues now 0-4-1 in their last 5 road games, which is why I'm really looking forward to tonight's game against the Flames for a few reasons. First reason with Calgary, they've got David Rittich, the all-star David Rittich. They've also got Cam Talbot, who I believe is starting in net tonight. I was not able to confirm that. But Cam Talbot has had a really solid save percentage numbers, but he's a .500 goaltender. Whenever I see goaltenders with not as many wins but still solid save percentages, that tells me that the team goal scoring is slumping, which I think is the perfect opportunity now for the Blues to jump on that. Because if you've got guys like Johnny Hockey, or if you got guys like Mark Giordano, and they're either, some of these Calgary Flames players, they were having career years last year. They were lights out for the Flames, who seemed to just run away with the Pacific Division towards the end of the season. For whatever reason, they're not, quite producing up to snuff now. And obviously, the Bill Peters situation from December. Did he get fired in December? That obviously does not contribute or help to things. But now you see the situation with Calgary. It's absolutely no different, in my opinion, than the situation in Vancouver last night. You have a team that's right there in that 5-team frenzy for the Pacific Division lead or being out of a playoff spot. I mean, you have to think that right here, right now, this is the moment for a lot of these Canadian teams, specifically Calgary. And that's another point that I want to make as to why this is a key game for the Blues to win tonight. Because, yes, the Blues are the Stanley Cup champions, and every team now has, got them in their crosshairs. A lot of them are probably marking it in their calendars, especially now that the Blues are still doing as well as they did at the beginning of the second half of the season. But if you look at Calgary's schedule this week, just this week alone, first of all, everybody mark your calendars tomorrow, and everybody mark your calendars Saturday. If you don't know what I'm talking about, and for a lot of my American listeners, ladies and gentlemen, mark your calendars. The Battle of Alberta is on. The Battle of Alberta is on, and I love it. Obviously, that was a huge storyline through all of Canadian media a couple weeks ago. The Zach Kassian and Matthew Tkachuk fight. I almost said Brady. No, I didn't. But now Edmonton and Calgary are finally both teams in a playoff race. It's the first time we've been able to say that in a while. You've got the Brady Tkachuk. I did it right there. I did it right there. It's ridiculous. You've got Matthew Tkachuk and Zach Kassian in that big fight last week. And now you've got a home-at-home this week starting tomorrow at 9 p.m. between the Flames and the Oilers in Edmonton. You got to think that for this week, when you have Blues, Oilers, Calgary's putting the Blues on the bottom of that totem pole. In terms of, focus for the game. Because you have a tight, uber tight division rivalry right there. And if you go 0-2 on the Oilers, or if you drop a couple of your games against Vancouver or against Edmonton, which the Flames also play the Canucks in less than a little over a week's time here, then all of a sudden, just like that, you're probably on the outside looking in, and you really need to start chasing. So I think this is going to be a pivotal week of games for the Calgary Flames, while the Blues are going to get put a little bit on the back burner. Now, yes, of course, it's the Blues. They're not going to just put this to the side, and no game is an easy one to win. But I think in terms of focus, you got to be thinking that the Flames are looking more towards the next 2 games rather than the game here tonight. In terms of rivalries, in terms of emotion, in terms of intensity. And I mean, the Blues, I think, again, this is the perfect time for them to rebound and get out of this 3-game winless skid. They are 4-1-0 in their last 5 games in the Scotiabank Saddledome. You've got Jaden Schwartz playing in his 500th game tonight. Alex Steen is going to pass Brett Hull for 4th on Blues all-time games. David Perron has a great point streak against Calgary. Braden Shen has 9 points, a goal and 8 assists in his last 8 games against the Flames. So this is the pivotal game to, as the Blues have done all season, snap the losing skid, get back into the win column. We started the second half of the season, if you will, on the wrong foot. We started this Canadian road trip on the wrong foot. Let's get back in the win column. Let's get something going here again as we continue on through Western Canada. Because you got guys like Talbot and Riddick that aren't going to give up a lot as long as their front end manages to score the goals for them, which as of right now, they haven't been doing a whole lot. I'm pretty sure Matthew Tkachuk is scoreless in his last 8 games or something like that, if I remember reading that stat. And the Flames have won 6 of their last 8, but I think their last 3 or 4 contests have only been decided by 1 goal. So again, goal scoring is low. That's your Blues defensemen have to be salivating at that thought. And you got to say to your scorers, okay, now's the time. Let's get cracking. Which eventually is what I think Sammy Blais is going to do as well, because Sammy Blais is going to return to the lineup tonight, as I just mentioned. You're not going to have a guy like Sundqvist, who's definitely that physical presence, and he's got some good streaks against Calgary too. So you're going to have to prepare and allocate for that. But I like the look of tonight's game. I really hope they get a win out of it, or else now we might be running into some trouble. So that's just some of my insights, my keys to tonight's game. Jordan Binnington will be in net, obviously, as Jake Allen played just last night, less than 24 hours ago. Blues are on in just about 25 minutes in the Scotiabank Saddledome in Calgary, Alberta, against the Flames. Again, moving on about the Tkachuk brothers. Once again, they're making headlines as 2 heavyweights. Brady Tkachuk, I'm going to get it right this time, Brady Tkachuk of the Ottawa Senators, getting into a huge scrap with PK Subban at the end of last night's game. These two, man, how long are we going to be talking about these two? I mean, yes, they've been in the media recently for the Battle of Alberta, for having all 3 Tkachuks at the All-Star game, just for them just being hotheads in general. But these are pretty good players, even beyond all the physicality and the rough stuff. So I got to think we're going to be talking about the Tkachuks for a while. As far as the fight goes, yes, I'm seeing a lot of people that are kind of on PK Subban's side, kind of mad at Tkachuk for picking a fight that PK Subban didn't want. I can definitely see that. But on the other side of the coin, even if PK Subban's not a fighter, at some point, man, I don't know what you have to do to start getting your game back up. Because PK Subban clearly has not been working out in New Jersey. Some people are even rumoring that he wants out of New Jersey and is requesting a trade less than 1 season in with the Devils. The Devils are not good, even though they had a lot of hype around them. What with Jack Hughes, with Subban and Wayne Simmons, with Nikita Gusev coming over. And now you've got both John Hines and Ray Shero have been fired from the organization within, I want to say, a month of each other. Maybe a little more than that. But for PK Subban in particular, a lot of people are questioning, what in the world has happened to this one-time Norris Trophy candidate, this elite player in Montreal and in Nashville when he took them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. You know, he sustains this injury, which I don't think enough people are talking about. You know, a little bit of the back or I believe was it an ankle injury officially, or was it a back injury? I'd have to look into that again. But if you have ever looked up PK Subban, you know that he has a training regimen that's like equal to the Marines. Like he's got like a Tiger Woods almost powerlifting intensity to his workouts. I mean, he's doing workouts that like bodybuilders should be doing, not necessarily NHL athletes. And he gets hurt over this offseason. He goes over to New Jersey, and lo and behold, all of a sudden he just does not look at all like the elite defenseman that he used to be. I don't think it's just a product of New Jersey still being as bad as they were the last few seasons. I don't think it's a product of Subban moving to a new team. He moved from his longtime home of Montreal to Nashville and progressed just fine. More than fine. They got to the Stanley Cup final. I think people do not talk about the PK Subban injury enough. And could you imagine any of the other teams that were front runners in the PK Subban trade talks or signing talks? And could you imagine the breath of the sigh of relief that those teams are breathing right now? I feel for PK Subban. Uh, I hate him every time he plays against the Blues. I love him every other time because he can be a mean son of a gun and he can be a real instigator of a lot of stuff. I know he doesn't fight a lot, which is another point that people were making to this fight between him and Brady Tkachuk. But I still kind of got a feel for him. It's tough to see, an athlete just turn from such a tremendous all-star caliber player to really almost irrelevant at this point. I mean, how much are we talking about PK Subban in New Jersey? Seriously. I mean, how much are we just talking about New Jersey in general, other than the fact that they're bad, other than the fact that their coach and GM went out in the same season? So for PK Subban, it's tough to see what his future will bring as far as hockey goes, whether or not he has to take a look into how he changes his own training schedules and regimen to try and better adapt, acquiesce as a player, and how long does his future go in New Jersey? Because again, there are some rumors that he might in fact want out. And then if that's the case, then who tries making a play for that? Who wants to make a play for this player that has just fallen off a cliff in terms of his performance from one season to the next? So it's a tough break for PK Subban right now. Again, I liked the fight last night, even if PK Subban didn't want it. I think before I wrap things up here, I'm already seeing it. Everybody's been sharing it on social media, and the Blues already posted it. The NHL shared it. You got to hear Brett Hull at the All-Star game. We all know Brett Hull is probably there's few words I think that can adequately quantify what Brett Hull is after his life with hockey. Obviously, he is a legendary hockey player, Stanley Cup champion, one of the Blues' best, if not the best Blues hockey player we've ever seen. But just as a personality afterwards, after all that's being said and done. And of course, the amount of emotion from him and from fans and seeing him at the All-Star game was terrific. But here is Brett Hull mic'd up during the All-Star game.
Heard a lot about you. Look at, we got new golf towels. That was terrible on breakaways. I would rather shoot it inside of 5 guys than ever have a breakaway, and I think Gretz will agree with me. Too much thinking. Come on, Petro, get one. Yeah! You got him up the middle. Let's go. Yeah, not so chirpy now, are you, Wayne? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I think someone put flubber on our sticks. Come on, kid. Come on, brother. Oh, boy. No, boy. You ever been to the Palm Mile? Straight to about here, and then... So we can go with where Mama keeps the cookies. Was it over when Jeremy bombed Pearl Harbor? I've never seen a good player with a red stick. You know that? True.
I'm still debating what was my favorite clip from that. I love the Germany bombing Pearl Harbor one. I was like, okay. And then if you look at the video of it at the very end where he just goes, I've never seen a good player with a red stick. And then you look at Ryan O'Reilly's stick, which definitely has red on it. And just kind of the look that he sort of shoots back at Brett Hull, like, sure, okay, cool. Can we jump back though to him chirping Wayne Gretzky? Can we find that again?
How are you, Wayne? So chirpy now, are you, Wayne? And not so chirpy now, are you, Wayne?
There's few people that could just chirp Wayne Gretzky like that, especially after his prolific and legendary career, and I love all of it. God bless Brett Hull, and God bless his liver. That's going to probably do it for tonight's episode. This has been the Blues Rants Podcast. Thank you all very much for listening. My name, again, has been Philip Miller. We got Blues, we got Flames on tonight, 8 p.m. at Scotiabank Saddle Dome. Have a good night, everybody.